And so it's important that this year is significant internationally as well, because this is the International Year of People of African Descent. And so many of us who are involved in work at the United Nations are focused on that this year. But I'm a believer in divine order, because for all of those components to come together at one time is very significant, especially for Gullah Geechees, because in each one of those things we have hardship and we have celebration. But one thing about our people is that they have been resilient. Even during chattel enslavement, while the Civil War was going on, we became the first large group of people of African descent to be landowners in what is now the United States, to be owners of the very same plantations on which our ancestors had been enslaved, working these three cash crops, which were what now? Rice. What kind? Carolina gold rice, Sienna cotton, and indigo. And so, with all of the things that our people have endured, one of the major things that we've had to deal with is people not accepting the reality of our intellect, because they often only want to relegate us to the period prior to the Civil War. And then after the Civil War ends, they act like we just faded away and didn't exist anymore. When you look at documentaries, you read many people's thesis papers, they do not acknowledge the existence of Gullah Geechees beyond the Civil War. They don't even acknowledge their existence during the Civil War. But can anybody here tell me the major role that Gullah Geechee men and some women played during the Civil War? Now, I'll take a couple of answers on that.
Soldiers.
Soldiers, number one. Anybody know the regiment, the regiment that was so significant? Speak a little louder. You said 512? No. Much lower number.
51st or 53rd?
You're thinking of the 54th, aren't you? That's the Massachusetts regiment.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Come on down, lower the number. How about, someone just said it. One, the 1st South Carolina Volunteer Regiment is also often written of as the 1st South Carolina Volunteer African Regiment. The majority of the people in that regiment were Gullah Geechees. Now there is a woman that's very significant in overall African American history that was a scout and a nurse that served in that regiment as well. But she herself wasn't Gullah Geechee. Anybody have a clue?
Harriet Tubman.
There you go. Harriet Tubman, who we also call Moses. She lived for many years during the Civil War in the county that I'm from, Beaufort County, here in South Carolina. And she had a laundry co-op with Gullah Geechee women there. And that was how she made her money. She at first was getting paid like other soldiers were, until the women got to talking. You know. You know how some women do. Oh, who does she think she is? So she knew who she was. And she knew that she was a freedom fighter for her people. And that she had only returned from upstate New York and Canada to the South, where a bounty was on her head, only for the cause of freedom for all people. So they were like, oh, please, she get a check from the government. Well, she told the government, don't give it to her. So now she operated a bakery, and she helped them organize a laundry co-op. And that's how her income came. She only ended up getting government funds after getting the pension from one of her husbands when he died. First husband, she left him back where he was in Bucktown, Maryland, because when she came to get him the freedom, he had another woman there, so she left him there. And she took her mother and father and her brothers and sisters and some more people and went to Auburn, New York. And she started a home for the aged there. And that site is part of the National Park Service now. And we also fought for the entire Harriet Tubman bill to be passed to recognize and acknowledge her as a significant part of American history. And so another woman that was part of that regiment was Susie King Taylor, who is a Gullah Geechee woman from Savannah, Georgia. Anybody from Savannah, Georgia up in it? All right, there you go. That's right, raise your hand. Represent. That's right. Don't get scared just because all these South Carolina people in here. So definitely, she was another very significant woman who was a nurse and a laundress for many of the 1st South Carolina Regiment. And the 54th Mass was depicted in what movie? Glory. But if you go back and watch it, you'll remember there's a scene where they pass another band. Remember, another group passes them, but they don't have the nice blue suits. They have more ragtag, kind of brownish looking suits on, because that was their way of including the 1st South Carolina in that film. And that film was shot again in Beaufort County and Charleston County, where all of this took place. All of it in the Gullah Geechee Nation. But it wasn't the Civil War that was what, quote, set the people free. It was the people's only hearts and their minds that did. Even today, freedom is a choice. And so one doesn't have to be free. You can stay in bondage at any time and believe things that people will tell you you should believe about yourself at any time. And for years, Gullah Geechees were told that we were backward and ignorant, simply because if you walked up to us, we might say, oh, how honored to do the I'm so glad to see you on a chiller. And then you would go, huh? And just because you didn't know the language didn't mean that it was ignorance. The ignorance is not knowing. If I came in this evening and said, je parle français, bonjour, would you laugh? Would you say I was ignorant? No. Why not?
Because you're speaking French.
Because I'm speaking French. So, and French is a
International language.
So why is it if I come in and say, well, I wanted to do this evening? Why isn't that acceptable? But many missionaries came in during the Civil War, and they started to teach that the students should not speak that way because it is backwards, it is ignorant, and it is broken English. I have tested this when I've gone to England. I have tested it all over the United States. There are only 7 states in the United States that I have 9 states in the United States that I haven't been to yet. And everywhere that I've gone and spoken before a group, I start off like I did tonight. And I can always tell when Gullah Geechees are there because they be the only people responding to me. And then when I start speaking this way, then everybody in the room can respond. So I say to them, how then did you think we were speaking English? Or even attempting to? When the last time I had gone, you want to forget a cut anything for now, put anything like that? Huh? You ain't know. You ain't know when you're going home, and you ain't know what I say. The last part. Yeah. I asked her, when was the last time did you go get a turtle and eat it? She looked, that's why I had to ask her, okay, so you don't know the last time you went and got one to eat, or you don't know what I'm saying? She said, I don't know what you say. So again, you speak English, right?
Right.
Fluently?
Yes.
Okay. So I've tested this. I've tested this amongst linguists, and they don't know what I'm saying. Now they have their, what I call their linguistic cheat sheet that allows them the phonetic structures of various pronunciations of things, so that they can put a sheet before them, and if they have those characters there, they can now attempt to pronounce these things. But they cannot dialogue with you. It's a script. I've met many actors. Anyone here ever seen, bless you, seen the film A Soldier's Story?
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you have. Oh, only a few of us. Okay, I know the rest of y'all like, what? What movie is that? Is it even on DVD? Yes, it is. You may even find it on YouTube now. But I saw it when it was a soldier's play off Broadway, and then when they made it into a soldier's story, it became one of my favorite films, although it's one of the most painful films for me to watch. Because there's a scene in it where he says the day of the Geechee is gone. And that has been a hurtful thing to many Gullah Geechees who saw that film. But yet we understood the story because we lived the pain of the story, of what happens to one of the characters in the story. Because for many years we were denigrated for speaking our own language. So you find that there are Gullah Geechees who will not speak publicly because they feel someone is going to put them down for their language, which is yet just another international language of the world. But when you don't understand, it is better to seek understanding than to deny that something is of any value. You see? Because we all have a story to tell, and it's not going to be exactly the same. And so, when I watched that film, no one could make me believe that the actors didn't know what they were actually acting about. Until another film came out, The Will to Survive, the story of the Gullah Geechee Nation. And when we premiered it in Los Angeles, California, it was a literal building full of stars. One of them was Art Evans, who had played in A Soldier's Story. He hugged me so hard and said, "Queen Quet, do you know, I now know what a Geechee is because of your movie tonight." I said, I wanted to slap him actually, but I said, "Are you serious?" He said, "Yes." He said, "All those years and I never knew what it meant." So someone can act like they know something and actually not know anything at all. You see? And a wise man knows he doesn't know everything. And there's a wise woman does too, and that there's yet something else to learn. So there are people who come into the Gullah Geechee Nation now, or have us come to you, that want to learn, that want to know, as we see, who we be, and things like that. So when Hunter children study about all the African and things, what the Koine and things like that during the transatlantic slave trade and things like that, you can start with. So when you start studying the transatlantic slave trade and you think about all the Africans that came in, you can start with us. Because over 40% of all Africans enslaved in America came through the Gullah Geechee Nation, in particular through an island called Sullivan's Island. That is the very same island on which I was installed as head of state and the first queen mother of the Gullah Geechee Nation. This is our national flag. And as you see, it says, "We be Gullah Geechee anointed people." The blue stands for the water. We believe the water to bring we up and the water going to take we back. It also stands for the indigo. The green represents the land and the harvest. And the gold represents the sun or brighter day. Now, interestingly enough, amongst Gullah Geechee people, God is the foundation for us. And the pillars that go on that foundation is the family. It's the community. And yet, our family and our community is sometimes hidden in plain view from a lot of people. Because we've learned to do just like I'm doing tonight, code switch. So when we come out in public and we realize we're amongst English speakers, we realize we're amongst the same people who told us in the past that we were ignorant for speaking our own language instead of saying you're bilingual, if you can speak that language and you can speak English, but they instead said, "Oh no, you're backwards." And then in schools would issue corporal punishment up until the 1980s. And we have been on the Sea Island since 1670s. But up until the 1980s, from the time that the missionaries arrived in the 1800s, people were issuing corporal punishment if they yet hunted in a crack teeth like they show it on the rest of the children, to make you stop speaking that way. And now, many of the same people who were educated to be educators now come to me and ask me, when will I do a lecture? When will I do a class? I said, about what? About the Gullah language. And I had one woman who had taught my mother and who had beaten many of the students who were Gullahs when they spoke Gullah, because they wanted them to speak as they called it proper English. Well, darling, the Queen over in England doesn't believe your English here is proper. Okay? American English and British English differ greatly. And so, to say to someone something is proper, that's subjective. But to many, they would say, well, proper. So now we switched, right? What do you call it now? Standard English. Who sets the standard? Who sets the standard for who does what and when they do it and how they do it? I firmly believe that the Creator of us all does. And there's a reason we speak many tongues around the world. And I feel that we should learn to celebrate those tongues. Celebrate who we are. Celebrate the richness of all the people we encounter. And I think the world would be a better place if we got that understanding. Instead of feeling like, nope, if you're not doing it my way, I got to crush you into submission until you do. If you notice something about this flag, what's in the middle of it? A tree? Anything special about the tree?
People are holding it up.
That's right. They're people. They're human bodies intertwined. That is what an African family tree is. Because we cannot exist without one another. We hold together, and that's how we remain who we are.